I remember the night I first heard them whispering. Not loud, not arguing, just whispering. The kind of hush people use when they know they shouldn't be doing something. I was sitting in the nursery, rocking my newborn son against my chest. The house was quiet except for the soft ticking of the wall clock and the gentle hum of the fan. I was half asleep, drifting between exhaustion and that strange new mother alertness that never truly rests. That's when I heard it. Voices coming from the living room. My mother-in-law's sharp whisper, my father-in-law's low, steady voice, and my husband's heavy sigh in between them. I didn't understand the words at first. Only the tone, tense, calculating. Not the tone of family planning meals or chores or baby photos. No, this was business. Serious business. Then I heard one phrase clearly, as if the wall between us disappeared. We need her signature. My heartbeat stuttered. Her. Me. I didn't move. I didn't call out. I didn't even breathe, I think. I just sat there in the dim room holding my son, wondering, signature for what? That's how it started. Not with a fight. Not with a mistake. But with a whisper in the dark. And let me tell you, whispers can be louder than screams when your heart already knows something is wrong. Before all this, things were, well, not perfect, but peaceful. I grew up on farmland, the kind where the fields stretch so far you forget where they end. My parents raised crops and a few animals, and the land was more than dirt to us. It was history. It was family. Every tree had a story. Every fence post had a voice. When I married my husband, I moved into his family's household. A common thing where we're from. I didn't mind at first. His parents seemed decent, respectful. They talked about family unity and helping one another. I believed that. I wanted that. And when my parents passed, one after the other, sickness taking them just months apart, the land became mine. Legally. Officially. Emotionally. It became my last tie to them. My husband always said, "Don't worry. We'll take care of it. We'll make sure the land stays in the family." I trusted him. Maybe more than I should have. Pregnancy changed everything. Or maybe it just showed what was already there. After I gave birth, my body felt like a house someone had emptied out and rearranged without asking. I was sore, tired, and always 2 seconds away from tears. And in that vulnerable time, I leaned on them, my husband, my in-laws, because I believed they would protect me while I healed. They handled errands. They managed the house. They even started going out to the land, saying they were checking fences, making minor repairs, helping out in my place. I didn't question it. I was grateful, or I told myself I was. Looking back, the signs were small, and I brushed them aside. My husband coming home with muddy shoes, but no explanation. My father-in-law taking calls outside. My mother-in-law suddenly asking where I kept my ID folder, the one that had all the land papers. I thought it was just family being family. Involved. Opinionated. Maybe a little overbearing, but harmless. I didn't know I was being softened. Prepared. Distracted. Postpartum makes you slow sometimes. Your world shrinks down to the size of a baby's breathing chest. You can't see schemes when you're just trying to survive. But the truth doesn't stay hidden forever. Especially not in a house where walls are thin and greed is loud. It was about 3 weeks after giving birth, a rainy afternoon. The kind where the air smells like wet soil and metal. My son was finally asleep, and I went into the living room to warm some tea. My mother-in-law was sitting at the dining table, sorting through papers. She froze when she saw me, just for a second, but I was too tired to notice or care. She covered the papers with a magazine, smiling too quickly. "You should rest," she said. "Let me make the tea." I nodded and went back to the bedroom, but something in me, I don't know, something old, something instinctive. It stirred, I realized later. That was the first clue. At the time, I told myself it was nothing. Because sometimes love and trust make us blind on purpose. The whispering at night continued. Not every night. Just enough that it began to feel deliberate, organized. I tried telling myself they were just planning something for the baby, or maybe talking about family money matters. I didn't want to be the paranoid wife, especially not with postpartum emotions running wild. But the words, "we need her signature," echoed in my mind like footsteps in an empty hall. One evening, I decided to ask my husband directly. I didn't accuse. I didn't attack. I simply asked, and the way he reacted, that was when the doubt finally became fear, but I'll tell you how that conversation went in the next part. When I asked him, I did it gently. We were in the bedroom. The baby was asleep beside me, wrapped in that soft sky blue blanket my mother had knitted before she passed. The curtains were open, letting in a warm afternoon light that made the room feel calm. My husband was sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone. I watched his profile for a moment, the way his shoulders slumped when he was relaxed, the small frown line between his eyebrows that deepened when he was thinking. I said, quietly, "Have your parents been discussing something about the land?" He froze just for a moment, just a flicker, but I saw it. A stillness that didn't belong. Then he laughed lightly. Too lightly. "Oh, that? They were just talking about maybe improving things. Maybe selling a small corner to fix the barn, things like that. Nothing serious." I nodded, but something in my chest tightened. "Why would they need my signature?" I asked. He turned then, a little too fast. "What signature?" I met his eyes. "The other night. I heard you all talking." His eyes narrowed, not angrily but calculating, like he was deciding how much to say. "Ah," he exhaled, leaning back and looking anywhere but at me. "It's nothing. Just paperwork updates. You're tired. You're not supposed to stress right now. Let it go. Let it go." That phrase. It felt like someone placing their hand over my mouth. He didn't reassure me. He dismissed me, and that was when the fear began to grow roots. The next few days I paid closer attention. Not dramatically. Not accusing, just watching. And when you start watching, you start seeing. I noticed my mother-in-law flinched every time I entered a room unexpectedly. She'd hide her phone or gather loose papers instantly. My father-in-law started referring to the land as the farm, not her land like he used to. The difference was small, but it mattered. Words reveal intentions before actions do, and my husband. He got quieter. Not kinder, not softer, just distant, like someone who was already living in a different decision. One afternoon, my sister came to visit. She lives about 30 minutes away and has always been the kind of person who can sense when something is wrong, even before you say a word. She held the baby and rocked him, humming softly, and I just leaned my head against her shoulder. I didn't cry. I didn't have the strength for crying. I just breathed. She asked, "How are things here?" And that simple question made my heart ache. I didn't tell her everything. Not yet. I still didn't know anything for sure. Suspicion without proof can make a person look crazy, especially a new mother. But I did say keep an eye open. Something feels off. She kissed my forehead, didn't push, just nodded. That's love. The quiet kind. The second clue came the following week. I was in the kitchen, trying to make myself something to eat. My appetite had been slow to return after giving birth. My hands shook sometimes for no reason I could explain. My father-in-law entered, speaking on the phone. He didn't see me standing there because I was partially hidden behind the open refrigerator door. His tone was low, businesslike. "Yes, we'll have the papers ready soon. She won't be difficult. She's emotional right now. Weak. It's the perfect time." My entire body went cold. Not angry, not shocked, just frozen. He stepped further in, saw me, and ended the call quickly. He smiled, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Need help with something?" I shook my head and walked away. I didn't even feel my feet touch the ground. That night, I lay awake holding my son. His tiny breaths were warm against my chest, steady, innocent. I looked down at him, and something inside me reawakened. Something older than fear, older than grief. A quiet kind of strength. The strength women discover only when they realize no one is coming to save them. Protectiveness. Not just for myself, but for my child, and the legacy my parents had left behind. I whispered into the darkness. They think I'm weak. They think this is the moment to take advantage. They have no idea who they're dealing with. It wasn't anger that steadied me. It was clarity. The third clue, the one that turned suspicion into certainty, happened the next morning. My mother-in-law walked into my room without knocking, acting overly cheerful, overly warm. She sat beside me and began speaking in a tone that was just one layer too sweet. "You know, dear," she said, patting my knee, "having land is a big responsibility. It takes a lot of work, and with you caring for the baby now, maybe it's time to simplify your life." I didn't respond, just looked at her. She kept going, smiling like a coy cat. "If we sold a portion, just a portion, it could secure a future for the baby. And it's all in the family anyway, so it's not really giving up anything." I set my son down gently in his bassinet. Then I turned to her, meeting her eyes fully for the first time in days. "What portion?" I asked. Her smile twitched. "Just most of it. Most, as in, leave me nothing but the memory of it." As in, erase my parents' lives while I was still healing from bringing a new life into this world. I nodded slowly, not agreeing, just acknowledging the truth. She thought I was breaking, but in that moment, I was waking up. I said quietly, "I'll think about it." She left the room satisfied. She didn't see the fire that had already begun to burn behind my eyes. The morning after that conversation, I moved differently. Not dramatically, not suspiciously, just awake. I fed my son slowly, humming softly so no one could say I seemed tense or upset. I asked my husband how he slept. I thanked my mother-in-law when she brought me a cup of tea. I laughed when my father-in-law made a joke about the baby's tiny fingers. I acted normal, because sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is watch quietly while everyone else believes she is asleep. But inside, I was calculating, listening, waiting, and then the moment came. Later that afternoon, my husband and father-in-law left the house together. My mother-in-law told me they were going to the land to check the fencing. I nodded as though I believed her. But I knew. Oh, I finally knew. As soon as I heard the sound of the motorcycle fade down the road, I called my sister. My voice was steady. "Come," I said simply. "Bring the car." She didn't ask questions, just said, "I'm on my way." While I waited, I packed my son's bag. Just the essentials: diapers, formula, one extra blanket. I locked my room door behind me as I left. It took my sister 12 minutes to arrive. 12 minutes that felt like a lifetime and a second all at once. She didn't even turn off the engine. I climbed in, baby on my chest. She looked at me through the windshield. "They tried to sell the land," I said. She didn't panic. She didn't gasp. She just nodded, jaw tightening. "Let's go." The land is about a 20-minute drive from the house, long winding roads cutting through tall wheat fields. I knew every turn, every tree, every patch of dirt that carried my childhood footprints. But that day, the land felt different. It felt like something sacred was in danger. When we arrived, the gate to the main field was wide open. And there, standing in the middle of the clearing, were my husband and father-in-law, with two other men I had never seen before. One held a folder. The other held a measuring tape. Buyers. I stepped out of the car with my son in my arms. The wind was strong that day. It whipped my scarf. Back behind me like a banner, my husband's, face drained of color. My father-in-law swallowed hard, one of the buyers, turned and looked at me like I was an inconvenience. "No." One spoke first, so I did. "What exactly?" I said calmly. "Are you doing on my land?" My voice didn't shake. It didn't have to. Silence fell like a stone between us. My father-in-law recovered first, stepping forward with a forced smile. "Ah, we were just discussing improvements." "Stop." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I shifted my son slightly in my arms. My sister stood beside me, arms crossed, feet planted like a wall. My husband finally spoke. We were just considering selling a portion. A portion? I repeated softly. Your mother told me most. His jaw clenched. My father-in-law stepped in again, annoyance seeping through his politeness like oil through fabric. You're being emotional. You're not in a state to make decisions. This is what's best for everyone. That land is sitting there doing nothing. My vision tunneled, not from rage, but from clarity. Doing nothing? I said. That land fed my parents. It paid for my education. It buried them. It is my inheritance. My history, my home. And you thought you could sell it while I was bleeding and breastfeeding? My father-in-law's face hardened. You should be grateful. We're trying to help manage your responsibilities. There it was, the word grateful, the kind men use when they want to claim ownership over a woman's life. I looked at my husband, the man I had chosen, the man who had promised to protect me. He couldn't even look at me. Did you sign anything? I asked him. He shook his head quickly. No, we were just discussing. Nothing's done yet. Relief flickered in my chest, small but present. Then I turned to the buyers. This land is not for sale, I said firmly. And if anyone tries to purchase it, I will take legal action. One of the men scoffed. It's all in the family, he said dismissively. They said you'd agree. I smiled, the kind of smile that does not mean joy. The woman they described to you, I said, adjusting the baby in my arms, is not the woman standing here. My sister took one step forward, just one, and both buyers took a step back. Funny, how truth can move mountains without raising a single hand. The buyers left, quickly, without looking back. My father-in-law turned on me the second they were gone. You've made a mess. You don't understand business. You don't understand what families must do to survive. I looked at him calmly. No, I said. You don't understand. Because family does not take advantage of someone when they are at their most vulnerable. My husband finally spoke, but not to defend me. We just thought. You didn't think. I cut in. You planned. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence between us was heavier than any argument. My sister drove us home. No one spoke. When we arrived, I didn't go into my in-laws' home. I went to my room. Packed my clothes, packed the baby's clothes, packed every document I owned, especially the land papers. I moved quietly, steadily, without a single tear. My mother-in-law appeared in the doorway, startled. You're leaving? I looked at her. Yes. For how long? As long as I need. She opened her mouth to speak, maybe to manipulate, maybe to apologize. But I walked past her without waiting to hear. I walked out of that house with my baby in my arms and my head held steady. And the wind followed us, like freedom. My sister drove us straight to her home. A small place, simple, tidy, with warm light and soft blankets everywhere. The kind of home that felt like safety, not because of its size, but because of its sincerity. When we arrived, she didn't ask for details. She took the baby from my arms gently, laid him in a bassinet in her living room, and said only, "Sit." So I sat, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I let my body relax. Not fully, not enough to feel peace, but enough to breathe without feeling watched. I could still see the field in my mind. The buyers. My husband's eyes refusing to meet mine. The betrayal didn't hurt in loud ways. It didn't break me with anger. It broke me quietly, like something inside me just loosened. Like stitching that had been holding my heart in place had finally torn free. My sister sat across from me, elbows on her knees, fingers woven together. She looked at me the way someone looks at a storm they cannot stop, but are determined to stand beside. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I told her about the whispering, the documents, the buyers standing on the same soil our parents' hands once tilled, the guilt in my husband's face. Or maybe it was only regret that he got caught. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she asked evenly, "What do you want to do?" Not, "What should you do?" Not, "How could they?" Not, "Why would he?" But what do you want? And that question, that's the question that decides who we become after betrayal. I didn't answer immediately. My thoughts were tangled. Grief, love, disbelief, shame, anger, all knotted together. But beneath the knots, something clear was forming. "I want to protect the land," I said. "Good," she replied. "That's step one. And step two?" I swallowed. "I don't know yet." "The marriage?" "I don't know," she nodded. "That's okay. One thing at a time." She stood, reached for her phone, and said 2 words. "I'll call Samir." Samir is her friend, a lawyer. Not a loud man, not an aggressive one. But steady. The kind of steady that wins battles without shouting. He arrived that evening. I sat across from him at my sister's dining table, the baby asleep in the next room, while rain tapped softly at the windows. The house smelled like lentils and ginger and warm roti fresh from the stove. Samir listened, quietly, thoroughly, asking only a few questions. Then he straightened the papers in front of him and said, "You're the sole legal owner. They cannot sell without your signature, and attempting to coerce you, especially in a postpartum state, can be argued as undue influence." He paused, looking directly into my eyes. "You have more power than you think." I exhaled, shaky but relieved. "Not victorious, just not powerless. And your husband?" he asked gently. I looked down at my hands, still marked faintly from IV bruises during childbirth. Hands that had held my child while others tried to take what my parents left me. "I need to speak to him," I said. Samir nodded. "Do it somewhere neutral. Do not go back to that house yet." My sister placed her hand over mine. A small gesture. A world of meaning. "You won't go alone," she said. "My husband called that night. 7 missed calls before I answered." His voice was frantic, cracking between guilt and defense. "Where are you? You took the baby. You scared my parents. You made a scene at the land." I didn't react. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just said, "We need to talk. Tomorrow. At my parents' house. A neutral place. A place that was still mine." He agreed, but his silence after felt heavy, like he knew what tomorrow meant. The next morning, my sister drove me to the land. The sun was rising slow and gentle, stretching gold across the fields. I held my son in my arms as we waited by the old mango tree, the one my father planted the year I was born. And then my husband arrived. He looked tired. Not because he had been searching for me, but because guilt drains a person in ways sleep cannot fix. He walked toward us, hands in his pockets, face uncertain. We stood a few feet apart, a distance too small for strangers and too wide for a married couple. I spoke first. "I need to understand why," I said. He exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. "It was my father's idea. He said the land was wasted, that we could use the money to build something better, a bigger house, a business, a future." I thought it made sense. "And you didn't tell me," I said. He looked up then, and the truth was ugly. "I didn't think you'd agree." I nodded slowly. "So instead of asking your wife, you planned to take advantage of the fact that I was physically weak and emotionally fragile. You planned to wait until I was too exhausted to fight back." His eyes filled, not tears. "Exactly. But the kind of regret that comes after the damage is already done. I didn't want to hurt you." I smiled. But it was the kind of smile that tastes like salt. "You didn't want to hurt me," I said softly. "You just didn't want me to be in the way." The wind rustled the mango leaves above us, like the land itself was listening. He stepped forward, voice cracking. "I love you. I love our son. I thought I was doing what was best." "No," I said. "You were doing what was convenient." Silence. I adjusted my son in my arms. He slept peacefully, untouched by the storms of adults. "Here is what will happen," I said, my voice steady. "The land stays mine, legally, emotionally, fully. No discussions, no shares, no conditions." He nodded, slowly, ashamed. "You will speak to your parents. You will set boundaries with them. Not for me, but for yourself. Because if you don't, we cannot build a home together." He looked at me then. Finally, really looked at me. And for the first time in this entire ordeal, I saw the boy I married, the one who once held my hands under this same tree. "I will," he whispered. I didn't say I forgave him. Because forgiveness is not a moment, it's a road. But I did say, "We will try. One step, one day, one boundary at a time." He nodded again, tears falling now. And I let the wind breathe for me. The next morning, I woke with a heaviness in my chest that felt like a stone lodged beneath my ribs. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my sister's face, cold, triumphant. And the way she looked at my husband like she owned him, I wanted answers. Not guesses, not assumptions. Truth, so I went looking. First, I searched through old family pictures. Birthday parties, wedding preparation photos, casual gatherings. That's when I began to notice it. In almost every picture where Umar and I were together, she was there too, always beside him, always smiling, my sister and Umar. He always had this polite, uncomfortable distance. Not close, but not unaware either, like he knew her attention was there. And he tolerated it. Or maybe he ignored it. I didn't know, but I needed certainty, not imagination. So I called someone who always knew everything in our family, the unofficial news reporter of every household matter, Auntie Zubaydah. She picked up on the second ring, her voice bright as always. "Are mera bacha, subha yadai. Khairiyat?" I took a slow breath. "Auntie, tell me something honestly. Before my wedding, did my sister ever show interest in Umar?" There was silence. Not hesitation, silence, the kind that holds truth inside it. Then I heard her sigh. A long, quiet sigh. The kind someone gives when they know the pain they are about to give is unavoidable. "Beta, main samajhti thi ki tumhe pata hai." My heart dropped. "What do you mean?" She spoke softly. "Your sister liked him first. Bahut pehle." She told everyone in the family circle she liked him. She thought he was supposed to be hers. My throat went dry. But he chose me. Yes. And that's when everything changed. She didn't take it well, Beta. She felt replaced. Replaced. That word cut like a blade. She continued. "Your mother tried to talk to her, but your sister, she believed that you took something that was meant for her." My hands trembled as I held the phone. The world suddenly made sense in a very cruel way. This wasn't just hate. This wasn't just jealousy. This was obsession. A belief that I had stolen her destiny, that my happiness was hers, that my husband was supposed to belong to her. I ended the call, quietly, and that's when I realized something I hadn't seen before. She never wanted me to suffer just to see me unhappy. No, she wanted me to suffer because she believed I stole her life. She wasn't trying to ruin my marriage. She was trying to reclaim it. That evening, I went to her house. I didn't announce myself. I walked straight in, my heart burning, disgust crawling through my veins. She was in the kitchen, humming, making tea like life was perfectly normal. I stood in the doorway. She turned and froze. I looked right into her eyes. No tears. No fear, just truth. "You liked him first." Her face didn't even flinch. She didn't deny it. She didn't panic. Instead, she smiled. That smile. Slow, sharp, triumphant. The smile of someone who had finally been recognized. "I didn't just like him," she said. "I loved him." My heart pounded. "And he never loved you back." Her smile twisted. Bitter. "Because you were in the way." My voice shook. "I'm your sister. Exactly, she whispered. Everything was always yours. The attention, the praise, the love. And when I finally fell for someone, fate handed him to you. She stepped closer, her voice chilling. So yes, I will take him, slowly, patiently, because I deserve him more than you ever did. My blood turned cold. This wasn't jealousy. This was delusion, deep, rooted, dangerous, and she meant every word. I left her house with only one truth echoing in my mind. She will not stop. Not unless she gets what she wants, and what she wants is my marriage, my life, my husband, and now. I knew what I had to do, but what I was about to do next would change everything. Not just for her, not just for me, but for everyone. I drove home with tears burning behind my eyes, but none of them fell, not this time. Because for the first time, I wasn't hurt, I was angry, truly, deeply, frighteningly angry, not just at her, but at myself, for letting this go on. For making excuses, for believing family meant safety, for thinking blood meant loyalty. It doesn't, not for everyone, not for her. When I entered my house, Umar was sitting on the couch, going through some paperwork. He looked up and paused. He could tell something in me had shifted. What happened? He asked softly. I sat across from him, my hands clasped together to stop them from shaking. Not from fear, but from rage that had turned into resolve. I know, I said. His eyebrows tightened slightly. Know what? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't break. I simply spoke the truth. She loved you, before me, and she still does. And she believes I stole her life from her. Umar's entire expression hardened. His jaw clenched, shoulders stiffened. Slowly, he leaned back, looking away for a moment, the weight of everything settling on him. I thought maybe it would stop, he whispered. I thought she'd grow out of it. I laughed. A soft, humorless, tired laugh. You knew. He closed his eyes. I didn't want to hurt you. That sentence broke something inside me, not because of the words, but because of how familiar they sounded. Everyone had tried to protect me by keeping me blind, and blindness is the deepest betrayal of them all. I stood. Umar listened to me carefully. He looked up. I met his eyes with the kind of calm that only comes when pain has finished burning and turned to steel. She is not going to stop. Not until our marriage is destroyed. Not until she believes she has replaced me. He swallowed hard. What do you want to do? I took a slow breath. We fight. His voice was quiet. Together, this time? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Together. Because the enemy was no longer my sister. The enemy was obsession, entitlement. Envy turned into madness, and fighting that alone would be suicide. The next step was the hardest. I had to confront the person I least wanted to believe had failed me. My mother. I went to her house that evening. She was in the living room, folding laundry. The TV playing in the background. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. Like everything in the world was perfectly normal. It took everything inside me to hold back the storm. Did you know? I asked. Her hands froze. Know what, Beta? I stared straight at her. That she loved him, before me. And you still let this marriage happen. Her face crumpled, not in shock. Not in confusion, in guilt, and guilt is confession without words. I stepped closer, voice low, steady, painfully calm. Why? Tears filled her eyes. Because I thought she would move on. I thought once you married, she would accept it. I nodded slowly. So you sacrificed me? To protect her feelings. She covered her face and cried, but I didn't move. Not to comfort her. Not to reassure her, because this time my pain mattered too. Your silence, I whispered, allowed her to believe she had been wronged. Your silence turned jealousy into entitlement. Your silence created this. She looked up, desperate, trembling. Please don't blame her. She is fragile. I finally felt the truth settle deep in my bones. No, she is not fragile. She is dangerous, and you helped her become so. I turned to leave. Her voice cracked behind me. What are you going to do? I paused at the doorway, and I gave her the truth she was most afraid to hear. I am going to protect what is mine, what she can never have. Because love is not a prize, marriage is not inheritance, happiness is not stolen, but it can be defended. And the war had just begun, but none of us were prepared for what happened next. Because the next move wasn't mine, it was hers, and it was far, far worse than anything I imagined. I didn't hear from Ariba for almost 2 weeks, and in those 2 weeks my house became quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the silence before a storm. Umar and I were gentler with each other. More careful, more deliberate. Like two people learning how to walk again after a long injury. We didn't talk about her often, but she was always there, in the space between our breaths. Kept waiting for the impact. Because when someone is obsessed, silence is not surrender, it's planning. One afternoon, I was breastfeeding the baby in the living room. The lace curtains fluttered from a soft breeze, sunlight coming in gold and warm. It could have been a beautiful moment. It should have been. But then my phone buzzed, a message, from a number I didn't recognize. No greeting. No preface. Just a photo. At first, the image didn't make sense. Then it did. It was a copy of a marriage certificate draft, with my husband's name and Ariba's. My breath stopped. Not because it was real. It wasn't filed. It wasn't legal. It wasn't stamped. But because she wanted me to see it, she wanted to remind me. I was first. I looked at the baby in my arms. Something inside me, something old and soft, finally cracked. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I wasn't just a woman who had been hurt. I was a mother. And mothers fight differently. Umar came home early that day. He walked inside and saw the look on my face. And he knew. I handed him the phone silently. He stared at the screen, and I watched the realization hit him like a physical blow. His face drained of color. His jaw tightened so hard I heard his teeth grind. No, he whispered. No, no, no. He sat down, burying his face in his hands. And then, for the first time, I saw his heart break. Not mine. Not hers. His. Because he hadn't lost me. But she had taken something from him too. His peace, his trust, his history. I knelt in front of him. Umar, look at me. He did, eyes red. Breath unsteady. This isn't your fault, I said quietly. He shook his head, tears forming but not falling. But I let it happen. I held his hand. Then we don't let it happen anymore. He lifted my hand to his forehead, and in that moment, we chose each other again, not because of marriage, but because of truth. But truth isn't enough when lies are spreading faster than you can stop them, and hers were already spreading, because the next call I received was from my aunt. Beta, why is it being said in the family that Umar is planning to take a second wife? My stomach dropped. No. She wasn't just trying to hurt me privately anymore. She was trying to shame me publicly, to humiliate me, to diminish me, to make me small. So I did something I had never done before. I called a family meeting, not for reconciliation, not for peace, for truth. We gathered at my mother's house, the same home where everything had started, the living room filled with the smell of chai and nervous tension, women whispering, men clearing their throats, eyes flicking between me, Umar, and the empty doorway because everyone was waiting for her, and then she walked in. Ariba stood there wearing a soft pink shalwar kameez, hair open, face fresh and glowing, like a bride. My mother looked at her as if she were fragile glass that might break if breathed on wrong. But I saw steel. She stood next to the sofa, hands clasped in front of her, eyes lowered in that practiced innocence, and I understood. She wasn't just jealous. She believed she was owed my life. She believed I was living the life meant for her. I spoke. First, my voice was calm, too calm. Ariba, did you tell people that Umar plans to marry you? A ripple of gasps moved through the room. She didn't look up, not once. I didn't say it, she replied softly. I only told the truth. That we were supposed to be together. Everyone knows that. My mother closed her eyes. My chest went cold. Supposed to be, I repeated. Not were, not are, not will be. Ariba's chin lifted, just slightly. There it was, the defiance, the entitlement, the belief. You took him, she whispered. I inhaled slowly. I married him. And he chose me, not once, but every day. Her eyes finally met mine, and they were. Not the eyes of someone hurt. They were the eyes of someone convinced. Someone who believed love was debt, entitlement, destiny. She spoke through clenched teeth, quiet but shaking. He was mine. Umar stood up. The entire room froze. He walked to her. Not close, but close enough that his next words could not be misunderstood. His voice was steady, broken, ending something. No, I was never yours. Silence, heavy, dead, absolute. Her face, shattered, not with pain, with disbelief. Because in her mind, this was never a question. This was fate, and fate in her world could not be denied. She shook her head, slowly, violently. No, you loved me, you were supposed to choose me. Her voice cracked into something raw, frantic, unhinged. She looked around the room as if begging for someone, anyone, to agree. No one did. My mother sobbed quietly into her dupatta. Ariba's breathing became sharp and fast. She looked at me. Not at my face, at the baby in my arms, and in that moment, when I saw her eyes, I understood. She didn't just want my husband. She wanted my life, my place, my identity. She wanted to become me. The room spun. Someone stood. Someone shouted. But all I could hear was my heartbeat, because she took one step toward my child. Just one. And I stepped in front of her. Firm. Final. Unshakable. My voice was low, quiet, deadly calm. Touch my child, and you will never walk into this house again. Silence. No one breathed. Not her. Not me. Not God. And that was the moment she finally realized I wasn't the girl she grew up with. Wasn't her shadow. I wasn't her mirror. I was a mother, and mothers don't compete. They protect. Her face crumpled, not with guilt, but with defeat. She turned and walked, out of the house, and this time, no one followed her, not even my mother. But peace didn't come after the door closed, because losing in silence is one thing, losing publicly is humiliation, and humiliation is a seed that grows into revenge, and she was not done, not even close. Word spread, not slowly, not quietly. It was like someone had dropped a match into dry grass and the flames ran wild. People talk. Families talk. Communities. Oh, they talk the loudest. Within days, it seemed like everyone who knew us also knew that Ariba had tried to take my husband, that she believed she was the rightful wife, that a second marriage had nearly been initiated, at least in her mind, but stories don't travel honestly, they travel flavored, seasoned with opinions, salted with judgments, burned with exaggeration. Some sided with me. Some pitied her. Some blamed Umar. Some whispered that my mother had always spoiled the younger one too much. But the loudest whispers were the ones she started herself. She stole my life. Umar and I loved each other first. They tricked me. And then, the worst one, he still loves me. He is only staying with her because of the baby. That one got back to me. Of course it did. Pain has a way of finding its way home. I tried, truly, to remain dignified, to stay quiet, to rise above. I told myself that her words meant nothing if Umar and I were strong, But pain doesn't stay still. It moves. It grows. And one evening, it arrived at my doorstep. It was a Sunday. Late afternoon. The house smelled like chicken curry and cumin. Umar was in the kitchen rinsing dishes. The baby was asleep in the bassinet. And I was folding tiny clothes, the soft ones. The ones that always smelled like milk, no matter how many times I washed them. There was a knock. Not gentle. Firm. Heavy. Purposeful. I opened the door. And there she stood. Ariba. Her eyes were swollen, like she had cried until there were no tears left. Her hair was messy. Her dupatta hung loose like she hadn't bothered to fix it. She looked defeated, but not repentant. No. She looked like someone who had lost something she believed was hers. She didn't ask to come in. She just stepped past me. Umar turned when he heard her. His entire body stiffened. She didn't look at him. She looked at the baby. Then at me. And she spoke. Her voice was quiet but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. You think you've won? My throat tightened. This isn't a game, Ariba. She blinked, slow, exhausted, trembling. Everything in life is a game, and whoever has the prize wins. She stepped closer, too close. I stood still, not because I wasn't scared, but because I refused to step back. The prize, she whispered, was not the land, not the marriage, not even the baby. Her eyes locked onto mine, dark, burning. The prize was that someone should have chosen me just once. Just once in my life. I wanted to be chosen first. My heart broke, not for her actions. Not for her obsession, for the wound inside her that had shaped all of it. She was not evil. She was empty. And emptiness can destroy everything it touches. I spoke softly. Ariba, you were not unloved. You were just loved differently. And you mistook love for ownership. Her face twisted. Don't speak to me like you understand me. Umar stepped in now, his voice steady, gentle, but firm. Ariba, listen. She flinched like the sound of his voice hurt her physically. Don't try to be kind. It's worse. It's cruel, and then her voice cracked open, raw, shaking, stripped bare. Why wasn't it me? No one spoke, no one breathed. The air itself seemed to bow under the weight of that question. I didn't have an answer. Umar didn't have an answer. Even God, I think, was quiet for a moment. She shook her head, voice breaking piece by piece. I did everything right. I was the obedient daughter. The soft one. The one who never asked for anything. And still, you got everything. I closed my eyes. It wasn't about Umar. It never had been. It was about all the invisible things we don't choose in life, who we become. Who is seen? Who is overlooked? Who is loved easily? Who is loved quietly? Who is never loved enough? She was drowning in a wound she didn't know how to name, but wounds don't excuse harm, and obsession cannot be allowed to live. Inside a family, I opened my eyes, and I spoke the sentence that would finally end it. You cannot come here anymore. She stared at me, stunned, like I had slapped her. What? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. You cannot call us. You cannot visit. You cannot be involved in our life. Not until you seek help. Real help. Her face went still, emotionless, dead. Then she laughed, a small, broken, hopeless laugh. So that's it. You're cutting me out, I nodded. I am protecting my family. Her eyes filled, not with tears, with hate. Hate born from heartbreak. Hate born from losing her sense of self. She stepped back toward the door, paused, then whispered, almost gently. You think this ends here? Not a threat, a prophecy. And just like that, she left. For the first time, I didn't chase her. No one did. But I wasn't naive. Hurt doesn't disappear. Hurt transforms, and hurt that has nowhere to go. Eventually erupts, and hers would. I could feel it in the air, in the quiet, in the waiting. This was not the end. This was the beginning of consequence. After that day, Ariba disappeared. No messages. No calls. No showing up unannounced. At first, I thought the silence was mercy. But silence is rarely mercy. It is gathering. It is sharpening. It is the inhale before the scream. Within a month, the whispers had turned into opinions, and the opinions into judgments. Some people spoke with sympathy. That poor girl. Her heart got broken, but others, imagine being so desperate for someone else's husband. Didn't her mother raise the both of them? How did only one turn out like this? And the worst of all, there must have been something wrong with her. Otherwise, why wasn't she the one chosen? I didn't celebrate any of it, because humiliation is not justice. It is only fire, and fire burns everyone eventually. But Ariba, she didn't defend herself. She didn't correct the stories. She didn't deny anything. She simply pulled away, stopped going to weddings, stopped attending family dinners, stopped visiting neighbors, vanished like she was erasing herself, and I worried. Not because I wanted her near me, but because isolation is a breeding ground for darkness. And one evening, that darkness came to my mother's door. It was late, around 11 p.m., when the phone rang. Umar was asleep. The house was quiet. The baby had just drifted into that soft, deep sleep newborns fall into like sinking into clouds. I answered. My mother's voice was trembling. Not crying. Just trembling. Beta, you need to come, please. My heart dropped. I didn't ask what happened. I just said, we're coming. Umar and I drove through the night, the roads empty and dark, streetlights passing in long streaks of gold. When we arrived, my mother was sitting in the living room, hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white, and Ariba was there too. But not the Ariba I knew, not the angry one. Not the broken one. Not the jealous one. She sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. Her hair was tangled. Her eyes hollow. Her face pale in a way that looked unhealthy, not fragile, faded, like something had been drained out of her, slowly, painfully. My mother whispered, "She hasn't eaten in days. She won't speak, she just sits." I swallowed. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't justice. This was collapse. Umar knelt beside her carefully, not touching her, just close enough to let her feel he was there. Ariba, look at me. She didn't move. I stepped closer. Her eyes flickered just barely, toward the sound of my voice. And when she finally spoke, her voice sounded like it came from somewhere very far away. I don't know who I am anymore. The room broke. No screams. No yelling. Just 4 people breathing the same pain, because the thing no one tells you is, when jealousy burns long enough, it consumes the person who holds it, not the one it's aimed at. My mother looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "Help her, please. She is still your sister. Yes, she was, and she always would be. But love is not returning to the fire that burned you. Love is knowing when to stop letting." The flames spread. I sat beside her, close, but not touching, soft, gentle, truthful. Ariba, you need help. Real help, counseling, therapy, someone trained to help you climb out of this. Her lips trembled. Are you sending me away? I shook my head. No, I'm helping you find yourself again. She blinked, slow, like the world was blurry. But who will I be, if I'm not the one he should have married? My heart cracked, because she truly didn't know. I whispered, "You will be someone who is no longer hurting." For the first time, she cried, not angry tears, not dramatic tears, not attention-seeking tears, just grief. The grief of letting go of the life she built in her mind, the grief of unlearning a story she believed was destiny. She collapsed into my mother's arms, sobbing like a child, and I knew this was the moment healing could begin. But healing is slow. Healing is painful. Healing requires distance. So we drove her, gently, quietly, to a therapist my aunt had recommended. A woman who specialized in identity trauma and emotional fixation. Ariba didn't fight. She didn't resist. She just walked inside, like someone finally setting down a weight they had carried too far. The weeks that followed were still, not peaceful, not distressed, just still. Umar and I rebuilt, brick by brick. Conversations became honest. Boundaries became real. Trust became intentional, and slowly, very slowly, life felt warm again, but I didn't hate her. I never could. Some pain softens you, not hardens you, and mine did. Because I understood her now, not as a threat, but as a woman who never learned how to believe she was enough. But the story isn't done. Not yet, because before healing comes closure. And closure came the day she returned. Not the same. Not the girl who wanted my life. Not the girl who watched me live what she thought was her destiny. But someone new, someone quieter, someone gentler, someone who had finally seen the wound beneath the rage. And that day, she asked me something I never expected, something that changed everything about how I understood love. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there in the cold silence of that guest bed, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the echo of my own heartbeat. Every word my sister had thrown at me replayed over and over in my mind like broken glass scraping across concrete. You think you're better than us. You were always the favorite. I deserve that life. Not you. It wasn't jealousy rooted in childish envy. It was hatred soaked through years of quiet resentment. And I finally realized she had never been my sister. Not really. She was somebody who watched my life like hunger watches a meal. Someone waiting for a chance. And that chance had come in the form of my husband. My marriage. My happiness, but the weight of the discovery didn't crush me the way I thought it would. It lit something else instead. Something slow, something steady, something cold. Revenge wasn't born in flames, it was born in silence. I waited until morning to speak. Walked into the kitchen where my husband and my sister sat together. But not close, not touching. Just aware of each other in a way that made my bones shiver. My sister glanced at me first, her eyes red as if she had cried. But I knew better. Those were the eyes of a wolf who had tasted blood. My husband couldn't even look at me. Good. Let the guilt rot him from the inside. I spoke softly, with tired calmness that neither of them expected. I'll be leaving today. My husband's head lifted fast. Leaving? You mean, yes, I said. I think some time apart will be good. For all of us. My sister's mouth twisted as if she couldn't stand the idea of me choosing dignity. She wanted me to scream, cry, beg, break. But I wasn't breaking. I was preparing. My husband tried to stand and reach for me, but I stepped back, and he paused, as if he remembered something. Maybe the first time he broke my trust. Maybe the 10th. Please, he said, voice trembling. Just talk to me. I already did, I replied. At the hospital. You remember, right? Before you decided to make decisions for us both. His face fell, like the world had been snatched out from under him. My sister looked suddenly uncomfortable. Because she understood I was not leaving. Broken, I was leaving with clarity. I packed, slowly, methodically, not rushing, not crying. Every folded shirt was another piece of myself I was reclaiming. When I zipped the final bag, I walked to the living room, where my husband sat with his head in his hands. My sister stood behind him, arms crossed, like she was guarding him, as if he needed protection from me. I took my keys off the table. And then I turned to my sister. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just spoke the truth, the kind that cuts deeper because it's quiet. You didn't steal my life, I told her. You just proved you never had one of your own. Her face went stiff, like stone cracking. Then I looked at my husband, and my voice, though gentle, carried every ounce of what I survived. "I loved you," I said. "And you let that love rot." His eyes filled, but I didn't stay to watch the tears fall. I walked out the door, and as it closed behind me, I felt it. Not freedom, not yet, but a beginning. The beginning of a woman who stopped being afraid to lose people who were never hers to keep. The first night on my own was quiet, too quiet. I stayed in a small rented room above an old woman's house. It wasn't fancy. The bed was thin. The walls were pale. But it was mine. And the air didn't feel heavy with betrayal. I sat by the window, knees pulled close, watching the streetlights flicker. Most people think revenge is loud, explosive, dramatic. But the real kind, the kind that lasts, begins in silence. It begins when you decide, "Will no longer suffer for people who chose to hurt me." In the weeks that followed, I didn't call my husband. I didn't answer my sister's messages. I didn't defend myself to relatives, neighbors, or anyone who asked. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them build their own stories. Because while they talked, I worked. I found a new job, a better one than the one I left. I met people who didn't know my past, didn't expect me to be small. I rebuilt my routines, my confidence, my self-respect, brick by slow brick. Healing is a quiet rebellion, and I was rebelling. My husband tried to contact me dozens of times. First calls, then voice notes, then long emotional messages. At first, they were full of excuses. It was just a mistake. I didn't know what I was thinking. "We can fix this. We can just forget." When I didn't answer, they turned into guilt. "You're giving up too easily. You're overreacting. You're destroying our marriage." Finally, they turned into begging. "Please just come home. I can't sleep. I can't eat." "I can't do this without you," I said. "Nothing." Because silence is not weakness. Silence is power when the other person knows exactly why you are silent. And then my sister reached out, not once, not twice, but repeatedly, angry at first, furious. "You think you're such a saint. Fine, go be alone. Nobody will love you like he did, but time has a way of stripping illusions." Weeks later, her tone changed because she finally understood something. My husband didn't choose her. He never chose her, without the secret, the thrill, the hidden betrayal. They had nothing. Their connection was built on destroying me, but now I was gone, and suddenly, they had to face each other in daylight. It didn't take long for cracks to show. One evening, as I sat at a cafe after work, my phone buzzed. A message from her, just one line. "He doesn't look at me the way he looked at you." I stared at the screen for a full minute, not out of sympathy, not out of satisfaction, but because I realized something. I didn't need revenge. Revenge was already happening, not because I acted, but because they now had to live with each other, with guilt, with insecurity, with the truth that they were each other's second choice. That's the thing about betrayal. It's only exciting in the dark. In daylight, it rots. Months passed. I grew stronger, not just in the way I walked, but in the way I breathed. My reflection started to look like someone I respected again, someone I trusted, someone I knew. And when I finally met my husband, not because I needed closure, but because he begged for it, I didn't go as the broken version of myself. I went as the woman who survived. We sat at a quiet park. He looked thinner, tired, older. And I felt light. He spoke first. "I ruined everything, didn't I?" "Yes," I said. "You did." He swallowed hard. His voice cracked. "I thought she loved me." "She didn't," I replied. "She only wanted to be me." He flinched, and then he asked the question broken men always ask at the end. "Do you still love me?" I smiled, soft, kind, free. I love myself more now. He broke, and I walked away, not as someone who lost a marriage, but as someone who found herself, didn't realize how quiet a healed heart could be. Not empty. Silence. Peaceful silence. The kind that settles deep in your bones, the kind that makes you breathe differently, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Life didn't transform. Overnight, there were still days I remembered the pain. Days where my chest tightened when I thought about how easily I was betrayed. But the difference now was, the pain didn't own me anymore. It didn't direct my steps. It didn't shape my choices. It didn't define my worth. I was finally living for me. I invested in myself. I took classes I always said I'd take one day. I joined a small women's book circle at the library. I redecorated my space. Soft colors, warm lights, quiet corners. I cooked for myself. Danced in my own kitchen. Sat in cafes alone with no fear of being seen alone. I learned solitude wasn't loneliness. Solitude was power. People. Started noticing the change. Not loud change. Quiet change. The kind you see in someone's posture. Their voice. Their smile that isn't forced. There is something magnetic about a woman who has walked through fire and didn't come out bitter. A woman who didn't need to scream what she survived. Because peace spoke for her, one afternoon, I was in the same cafe I had been visiting for months. The owner, a gentle old man with kind eyes, placed a tea in front of me without asking. He already knew my favorite. As I sipped it, someone at the next table smiled toward me, not in a way that intruded, in a way that asked quietly, "May I know you?" He was calm, gentle, soft in the eyes. Not someone who demanded attention, someone who offered presence. We didn't talk that day, just exchanged a small nod, but a door opened in my life. Not for a new person, but for the possibility of one. Weeks passed before we spoke. It began simply, a comment about the book I was reading. A discussion about poetry, a shared laugh about something small. There was no rush, no performance, no anxiety, no trying to be enough. I wasn't trying to earn love anymore. I was simply being myself, and someone met me there. He never asked about my past immediately. He didn't push. He didn't pry. He let me offer pieces of myself. When I was ready, and when I finally told him, he didn't look shocked, or uncomfortable, or pitying. He just nodded and said, "You didn't deserve that, but I'm glad you stayed soft." And I realized something in that moment. I hadn't just rebuilt my life. I had rebuilt my heart. Months went by. The old wounds didn't feel like open cuts anymore. Just scars. Reminders of what I lived through. Not definitions of who I was. I no longer thought of my sister with rage. I thought of her as someone who chose envy over love, and lived the consequences. I no longer thought of my ex-husband with grief. I thought of him as a chapter that closed when I finally chose myself, and choosing myself was the most beautiful ending of all. One morning, I opened my window to the sunlight warming the curtains. The world looked ordinary, but it felt brand new, and I whispered, quietly, to no one in particular, I didn't lose anything. I just returned to myself.